There is a broken trust with rail, and Randy will brief us about it. Thank you, Randy.
I like public transportation. I like trains. When I'm on the road, I would rather ride the train if it's available as opposed to renting a car. 38 years ago, I met my wife on bus number 6, city bus in downtown Denver. So I mention that because people who are for rail, sometimes when they recognize that I'm one of the litigants who has sued the city on the rail issue, they sometimes ask me, why am I against transit? Why am I against public transportation? And I'm not at all. And I hope in the next few minutes to explain how I can be for all of that and yet strongly opposed to the elevated heavy rail system that's proposed for Hawaii. Panos mentioned that I was involved in what a lot of people still think of as the Bishop Estate controversy. And in that, one of the things that motivated me was that there was what I perceived as widespread, serious breaches of the law, breaches of fiduciary duty. And I felt that the trustees were getting away with it over an extended period of time, in part because there was a shocking lack of transparency and what I perceived as a substantial amount of deception. And there are elements of that in how I view the rail proposal here. I'm starting with some pictures. I believe, and I suspect many, maybe all of you believe, that a picture can be as much or better than 1,000 words in conveying something. This is from front going bottom to top, that's Nimitz. From left to right, that's Bishop Street. And the 4-story building on the left there is the Dillingham Transportation Building, a historic structure. This is what it looks like today, and this is what it would look like with elevated heavy rail. I've showed this picture to a number of people who haven't believed it, who thought that this was some sort of deception on my part, some sort of attempt, you know, the angle or who knows what the trick might be, to make it look ridiculous as opposed to what it would really look like. Well, this rendering was put together by the Honolulu chapter of the American Institute of Architects. Now, normally, if you're talking about the largest capital works project in the history of a state, the architects who probably are going to get some work out of that would naturally be supporters. But the local chapter of the AIA was so offended by what they perceived as the renderings that were being distributed by the city that it didn't really convey just what this would look like, that on their own dime they put together these renderings. They're not a litigant in the lawsuit. They're relatively objective in observing what's going on. I'm encouraging them to get more directly involved. But I think a picture speaks 1,000 words here in the sense that, to me, especially in a place where tourism is at the heart of our economy, and we pride ourselves on being paradise with a Hawaiian sense of place, that's what it's going to look like. Oh, it is misleading in one way. This rendering was put together when the columns were still planned to be 8 foot in diameter. They've since been changed to, 6 foot in diameter. They've since been changed to 8 foot in diameter, which by volume increases it by 75%. So it's going to be more imposing than that. Here you've got, and unfortunately the entire rendering doesn't show, just off to the right side out of view is Aloha Tower, Chinatown over to the left. This is as it is today. Here we've got with elevated heavy rail. Here you've got Waipahu without elevated heavy rail as it is today. There's elevated heavy rail. Here you've got, and again it's not showing up completely, but this is looking at from the intersection of King and University, where UH Manoa is up ahead off to the right. That's today. That's with elevated heavy rail. I don't think that the way the city has portrayed what it will look like is nearly as accurate, nearly as helpful in getting a sense for what we're really talking about as compared to what the architects have done. On elevated heavy rail, in my mind, I kind of sort out what are my major thoughts on this stuff. And I really think traffic congestion is a big problem. Not traffic congestion as it might be in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I think traffic congestion today is a huge problem. When I came in and there were people out front chanting that they wanted rail, and then there were some individuals talking about why they want rail, while I was standing there listening, it was all about the intolerable level of traffic congestion today, that we have to do something about traffic congestion today. I agree. And the thing is, and as the one gentleman earlier acknowledged, the city, the FTA, everybody on both sides of this issue, everybody who's looked closely at it, Parsons, Brinkerhoff, everybody has said the current level of traffic congestion isn't going to get better if we build rail. It's going to get worse. Now they go on to say, but it would be even worse than that if we don't build rail, but that's a false choice. Nobody that I know is for doing absolutely nothing. In fact, the people that I work with who are staunchly opposed to rail, in part were staunchly opposed to rail, with me, primarily opposed to rail, because it isn't a solution to this huge problem of traffic congestion. It just isn't. And so if somebody has somehow got the impression that that's what elevated heavy rail is all about, this terrible problem of traffic congestion, you've been misled. Because even the people on the side of rail, in the environmental impact study, in the letter from the FTA, anywhere you want to look, they have said if rail is built, the level of traffic congestion at that point with rail is going to be worse than it is today. And again, nobody is saying that we should do nothing. I'm saying that we should do something that's actually going to address what I perceive as the problem, traffic congestion. And so far as cost is concerned, I started out my adult life as a CPA. I'm a numbers person. I think that the cost of something is a relevant consideration when you're deciding what you can afford, you can't afford, cost-benefit analysis, all that sort of thing. I think it's going to cost a lot more than what the city is predicting. There's no reason in the world why everybody else would be 40+% off, but we would nail it. We don't have experience here with building elevated heavy rail. Yeah, we've got a wonderful consultant, Parsons Brinkerhoff, over here. They've been involved in other rail projects where the estimates were way off. Oh, by the way, we needed to get somebody at the city level with some expertise to kind of balance out what we're hearing from this consulting firm. So they hired somebody to be the top staff person with the city on rail. He had been an executive with Parsons Brinkerhoff working on this exact project, walks over to the other side of the table now on behalf of the city. His wife is still at Parsons Brinkerhoff. Now, of course, it makes sense, in addition to somebody at a staff level in the city, you're going to want to get some organization with expertise, pay them a lot of money to provide oversight to Parsons Brinkerhoff. Well, they hire 3 executives from Parsons Brinkerhoff who break away, form a new company, Infraconsult, and now they're there to provide oversight. Now, I'm not saying Parsons Brinkerhoff has done anything wrong. Of course, there are conflicts of interest. Conflicts of interest in and of themselves are not necessarily a bad thing. And sometimes the circumstances are such that you really can't completely avoid it. But when you've got that sort of web of relationships, transparency becomes doubly important. Good systems of accountability become doubly important. And from what I can see, we have a shocking lack of transparency. Basic information that any interested citizen ought to have access to. Those of us in the lawsuit, we're spending a fortune having to go through the discovery process using the power of the courts just to get basic information that any citizen ought to have ready access to. Right. To me, that's very troubling.